What's happening, everybody? Guess I got to play with the audio on the YouTube feed. But for those listening after the fact, you're getting me loud and clear. No jams in the background, nothing to distract you from the dulcet tones. Tones? I biffed it. Well, I'm Dan Bespers. This is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. It is your Wednesday afternoon show, and this is ADP Risers and Fallers. I don't have like an intro video or something cool to throw in there, but that's where it would have gone if I had one. Hey, if you're out there and you know how to do something like that, because I don't, I'd love an intro video. help a dude out. Follow at Dan Bespers on Twitter. Follow at Old Man Squad. I am having trouble talking this afternoon. Old Man Squad. It'll follow you back. Like, rate, subscribe. Like, rate, subscribe. Like, rate, subscribe. Like, you guys know the drill. Just do it. Come on. Even if you've been doing it the whole way through. If you've done the rating, you've done the subscribing, the likes are still important. You may not feel important, but if you and the 50 to 100 other people also feel that way, it becomes quite important. What does ADP have to do with anything? Well, for one, pre-rank for Yahoo, pre-rank whatever, is going to kind of create the board, but it's imperfect. ADP is telling us where guys are actually going. ADP movement tells us where they're on their way to going. Because sometimes, and an example of this before we get into the actual movers of the day, is someone like, say, honestly, let's just start with the first name on my list, Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving has a pre-rank of 14, a current ADP of 17.9. It started at 15.5, dropped to 16.2, now down to, it's at 16.6 the last time we updated the board. Now it's at 17.9. So it actually has continued to move even a little bit further. But the reason this is important is it's not even telling us the entire story. So let's go ahead and for YouTubers, we're going to just share the screen so you guys can see a little image of who we're talking about on a moment-to-moment basis. But like Kyrie Irving, for instance, don't even worry about his stats. The pre-rank and the ADP together tell you most of the story here. The pre-rank on Kyrie was 13. It went down to 14. The ADP for Kyrie started at 15.5. It's fallen to the mid to late 17s. So sure, as we've talked about, the pre-rank board does tend to create most of what happens in a Yahoo draft. But someone like Kyrie Irving, looking at the ADP, you can garner very easily the information that he's typically going later than that pre-rank. And with that, we can figure out a few things. Number one, if you have pick 16, 17, 18 in your draft, let's say you actually wanted Kyrie, which we kind of don't, but let's say you did, you have a better shot of getting him than you'd think by looking at just the pre-rank of 14. And secondly, and this is the math part of the equation, ADP changes reflect a direction a player is going. So over the last week, and we're going to do this long discussion on just Kyrie Irving, the other names on the board, and we've got like 20 names to go through. It's going to be a pretty quick, rapid-fire kind of show. But I wanted to give you guys kind of the background on why this information is important, why we can use it. Kyrie Irving's ADP at the last update, when I did it, I've been updating these at the beginning of the week. I realized that now it's the middle of the week, so there's some slight tweaks to that. But at the beginning of the week, Kyrie Irving was at 17.6. He had dropped 1.4 since the previous week. That doesn't mean that he's going at 17.6 right now. In fact, and the movements are going to be more pronounced right now because we're still in the very early going of data collection. It's harder to move a player's ADP in mid-October than it is in early September because there just haven't been that many leagues happening. But for Kyrie, for instance, starting at 15.5, to move him to 17.6, he actually has to be going later than that. We don't have the actual data on exactly how many leagues were being factored into that very first ADP at 15.5 or even last week at 16.2. So it's not like I can say, oh, well, half the leagues are, first half of the time he was at 16.2. Now he's at 17 point whatever. So obviously the second half of the data has to be at 19. But we can kind of fudge the numbers a little bit and say we expect that he's going closer to 19. And in fact, the longer we go, and we'll do more ADP shows like this, one every week or every 2 weeks or something like that, depending on, how significant the movements are. The longer that we collect data on this, the bigger, okay, follow with me, the later in the process, right now it's still very early, but the later in the process we look at this data, the bigger the change has to be for this player to move their ADP by any significant number. And I know what you're saying, Dan, moving from 15.5 to 17.5 is not that big. For a player going in the early rounds, moving 2 is actually a pretty big deal. You don't see that very often. And in fact, of all the players pre-ranked inside the top 20, I think there's only one other player that's moved more than 2 full ADP integers, and that's James Harden, who's actually the next player we're going to talk about once we finish up actually saying what I want to say about Kyrie Irving. So you guys get the idea. This is why this information is relevant. So on Kyrie, now let's just do what we're going to do on today's show. You guys have the background. You have the strategic element to this. Kyrie Irving started at 15.5. Last update I did, he was at 17.6. I realize that's a little bit different right now, so ignore those subtle changes. Falling 2 slots means that he's actually getting drafted probably closer to 19 or 20. Again, probably. Is that good enough? Because I did not want Kyrie at 13, 14, 15. Do I want him at 20? And that's basically the game we're going to play on today's show. Do I want this player where they're going now or where their ADP suggests they're on their way to going? Is this of value? For Kyrie, my answer is still sort of a no, but it's damn close now because he got up to number 27 last year in only 58 games played. I do think there's a decent shot he gets into the low 60s in games this year, which would get him into the early 20s in totals rank with that big per game number. So if you're getting Kyrie near 20 this year in a games cap format, I think that's an all upside play. In a head-to-head format, you're getting much closer to even money. So even though his pre-rank is 14, his ADP movement suggests that he's going closer to 19 or 20, and now he's getting closer to even money. James Harden, next name on the list. We'll just put his face on the screen so YouTubers know who we're talking about, but there's not going to be any data displaying other than just like this is a tracker of who we're discussing. James Harden was one of my favorite plays on the board. He opened up with an ADP of 25.7. His pre-rank has shifted earlier, which is definitely playing a role here, but he jumped only 0.4 that first week. This last week, he jumped 1.9. That's a large leap for an early round player. His ADP says 23.4. Again, that's a 2+ jump in the early round, so in all likelihood, he's going earlier than that. And in fact, most of the drafts we're seeing lately, he's going earlier even than his pre-rank. So I would think that Harden is someone you're probably going to have to take before 18. I don't think he's even getting to that marker, but we'll see. The next batch of ADP data will probably give us a little more of an indication on that. And you can see, even in the last 2 days, he's jumped another 0.7. So he's flying up the board. He's now 3 full jumps since that very first number. So Harden's going in the teens. Do I still like him? Because this was someone we really liked before. My answer is yes. He was 25 last year. He's going to do a whole lot more. I was comfortable taking him here anyway. It has certainly whittled the value down by a large amount, but I still think there's a little bit left. LaMelo Ball is another dude who's on the move. He's up to 27.7. He actually went down, oddly enough, the first board, but now he's jumped 2.4 in the latest one. LaMelo's not moving up as far as Harden, despite the fact that his pre-rank is sooner. I expect him to still be going closer to 20 than to 14, where you can kind of flip that on Harden. I loved LaMelo at his first pre-rank, or his first ADP of 28.1. His current ADP is 27.7, but I would venture to say that because of how fast he's going, he's probably going more towards the back end of the second round, not the start of the third. And I don't know that I really want him at the back end of the second round. He's close, and I'd consider it, but there's just such a nasty taste left in my mouth. He was number 22 per game in 9-cat last year, so I understand why he's probably getting drafted near 22. And then if you're punting turnovers, he flies up the board. He was number 11 in 8-cat last season, so there's that extra little thing there. But again, until I see him play most of a season, I kind of want to let it alone. And I get it. Someone might get LaMelo at 20, and, he might be number 20 in 9-cat, and he might be number 12 in 8-cat, or whatever it turns out to be. And so for head-to-head leagues, that could end up as sort of a little bit of a value missed, but I'm really trying hard not to take an unnecessary risk. And that one feels like an unnecessary risk to me. Kawhi Leonard, he is zooming, and I mean freaking zooming up the board. His pre-rank got adjusted, and that was a big reason why we've seen him take this kind of flying leap. But Kawhi's been one of the biggest early round jumpers. He jumped 3.2 the first week. He jumped 2.4 again. So he's climbed 5.6 over these last 2 weeks. That is the largest move of anybody in the early rounds, minus Ja Morant, who, again, remember his first pre-rank was 300, so literally nobody was noticing him. That one's kind of an outlier. Kawhi, his ADP is 35 now. It's jumped from 40.6, so you can safely assume that he's going closer to 30 when you just kind of say, look, if we split the difference here, we're going to treat it as kind of like a half and half the first week, half the second week. So he's legitimately going more like 28, 29, 30 range. Kawhi is, games cap formats, I still take him there because, again, we really only need to get into the 60s to beat that number. Head-to-head, I don't think that I want him at the beginning of the third round, which is now sort of where you're going to have to do it. I know there's a lot of upside built in there, but it's too much. So Roto, yes. Head-to-head, no, on the new spot for Kawhi Leonard. Next name we're going to talk about is Ja Morant, who, again, he's a little bit of a sort of like a weird, odd test case. His pre-rank is 42 now, and it was 300. So, unsurprisingly, he has moved a lot. He started at 47.8 because then people were just like, hey, I forgot about Ja Morant. And so people were taking him. Now he's at 37.8. He's jumped 10 slots in 2 weeks. This one's a little bit less like Kawhi because I don't think his real ADP is another 10 slots sooner. It's probably more like another 4 or 5 slots sooner. And I don't want Ja Morant in the end of the third, beginning of the fourth round. This one, he's gone too early. If he falls back towards the mid to late 40s, I'll consider it, but not where he's at right now. We got a big faller in this range. Desmond Bane fell from 33.5 to 39.2. He went from being somebody I would not touch at all where he was before. 33.5, that was way too early. And again, now down a bunch. What did I say the most recent number was? 39.2. So that means he's actually going in the early 40s. I think that's a perfectly reasonable spot. So I now like Desmond Bane in the early 40s. I think he's even money there, which, again, sometimes there are rounds where you just don't see a guy you think is going to take a 3-round jump. And I know you could go and you could do some reaching, but a lot of fantasy draft strategy is game theory. How can I get both guys I want? If I take the other guy that's going 9 slots later usually, maybe I get one guy I want, but Bane won't be there. Let's say, again, hypothetically, let's say I really wanted to get Desmond Bane. I think he's going to be fine. I don't think it's going to be a big win or a big loss, but you could take Bane at 39 or 42 or whatever, and maybe the other guy that's going near 51 makes it back to you. So there's this whole what order do I take guys in? And that's why we talk about going in this kind of round by round fashion. DeAndre Ayton was another very large jumper over the last couple of weeks. Ayton was 73 to start. He's now all the way up to 67 2 weeks later. And again, a big jump in his pre-rank is the main cause of that. But that also means that he's going earlier than 67. He's probably going closer to 60. And that's a spot where now he goes from being a guy I would draft everywhere in the 70s to a guy that I would pretty much only take in games cap. I think the shutdown injury stuff now outweighs the upside with Ayton in head-to-head formats. You got to get guys that are not putting up zeros in head-to-head, Where in a games cap roto format, you don't want to take an injury risk in every round. Like, you don't want to go Embiid, Kawhi Leonard, DeAndre Ayton rounds 1, 3, and 6. But, you could do Jimmy Butler in the 4th and Ayton in the 6th or something like that. You get away with a couple of them. So Ayton, now he's a games cap play only is how I feel about this one. And I failed to put his name up on the screen, mostly because I wasn't able to move the mouse fast enough, but I'll just flash him up there so folks that are watching know that we did indeed just talk about DeAndre Ayton. Scroll back 80 seconds if you want to hear it. Tobias Harris. Pre-rank jumps way up to 64, and not surprisingly, his ADP does as well. Started at 78.6. Over the last 2 weeks, it's jumped all the way to 72.8, which means he's moving farther than that. So don't look at ADP and think you can get him at 72 or 73. If you want Tobias, you're going to have to get him in the 60s. He's going in the mid-60s now in a lot of drafts. 50s in drafts with people that listen to my show, but I don't think that's the way the real ones are going to go. I'm still into Tobias in the mid-60s. I still think he's a value there. It's obviously less fun, but he's still good enough, and that's okay with me. D'Angelo Russell is another player that's falling. His pre-rank is 78. His ADP now is 75. Where's he at? Come on, Dan. Find it quick. Quick. Where's D'Lo? Come on. There he is. 74.3 was at the latest board. He's actually falling a little bit farther than that because he started at 68.7, which I thought pretty much wiped out all of his value. But if he's really going now in the late 70s, which is where you're seeing him go, his ADP is moving and moving fast. Fell 4.9 this last week. That means he's actually getting drafted more like the late 70s. I like D'Lo around 80. I think he's a hell of a value there. So he goes from someone that I thought was maybe break even at best to a value play. So I can dig it. I like that quite a bit. Cam Thomas is another big mover. Oh, boy. His pre-rank jumping by 20 was the main culprit here. But he jumped up 4.9 over this past week after falling, by the way, 3.7 the previous week. So he's all over the map. ADP is 82.2. He's actually going more like mid-70s. And I think we've wiped out his value. So he was someone I really liked when he was going in the 85 to 95 range. He's someone that I don't like as much going in the early 70s. I don't think there's the big jump ability anymore, which, womp womp, so it goes. But green your pastures. You had a value, you lost it, but sometimes, and this is a good example of like, we throw a hissy fit every time the board shuffles, but it creates things where there weren't things before, and it takes some stuff off the table. Next name among the movers is Jordan Poole. He fell 7.4 over the last week. That is one of the biggest single week bounces for anyone. ADP fell from 83.9 to 90.7. 83.3 to 90.7 over the last week after it actually went up by 0.6. I think Jordan Poole is a hell of a value where he's going now because 90.7 is not even the full story. He's actually getting drafted in the mid-90s in spots. There's a range of players going in there that are not that fun, so you could even go a little bit earlier on Poole. Jordan, remember, really kind of got his season turned around when he was allowed to play more point guard. He got closer to 6 assists per game. The scoring moved up into the 20s. He was around number 80 with high turnovers, so much better than that in 8-cat than 9. And I think we probably see this iteration of Jordan Poole sooner this year because there's no Tyus Jones going 70 games before they turn Jordan loose. The point guard is Malcolm Brogdon, who's going to be healthy for a few weeks, but they're going to be trying to move him. He's going to get hurt. That's the Brogdon way. And then Jordan Poole gets to do whatever the hell he wants. So I like Jordan Poole near 90. I think he's pretty good there. He has turned himself into a value with this ADP shift. Clint Capela. What the bloody bleep is Clint Capela doing in this range? I forget his actual pre-rank. I'm going to try to find him to throw him on the screen for those that are watching. But it's something painfully early. Yeah, his pre-rank is 74 now. Not surprisingly, his ADP is skyrocketing lately. He went 2.7 up the previous week. 5.1 he went up this week. Overall, he's jumped, 7.8 slots. He's getting drafted in the 80s now. I just like, if you're punting free throws, just take Mitchell Robinson or Dereck Lively or Trace Jackson Davis or someone like that 2 rounds later. Don't spend your 7th, 8th round draft capital on Clint Capela, especially if he gets jumped by Okongwu. Just don't do it. Okay? He was barely even money where he was before, and now he's a please no. He's a please dear God no. Terry Rozier is someone nobody wants. And I think we've gone too far. We've sort of jumped the shark on Terry Rozier hatred. He fell 3.1 last week, 2.5 this week. He's already down another 1.5 over the last couple of days. Nobody wants anything to do with Terry Rozier. And I get it. He's all jammed up in Miami. It's going to be hard for him to find his lane when that team is fully healthy. But here's the thing. Jimmy Butler doesn't actually shoot that much. And Bam Adebayo doesn't actually shoot that much. Tyler Hero is the guy that's out there chucking away. So there are actually some shots left for Terry Rozier. Not a boatload, but 12, 13 is quite doable for him. And he's a top 100 guy. He's a good free throw shooter. He's a good steals guy. He's a great 3-point shooter. He gets points. He's not a great assist guy, but he's not horrible at it. And then the upside there is the fact that we're able to draft him basically at his expected floor, which again, like he's going outside the top 100 lately. I just got him in a mock draft a few hours ago outside the top 100. I had no intention of drafting Terry Rozier. But if we take that ADP movement and say, look, this dude was at 92.8. Now he's at 98.4. This dude is falling. He's getting drafted at like 105 these days. 105 is a very reasonable place to take Terry Rozier because 105 is kind of his floor. And every time Jimmy Butler rests, he's top 65. And every time Tyler Hero misses a game, he's top 65. And if heaven forbid, and it happens every year with Miami, 2 of those guys go out, he's top 40. Love drafting guys at their floor, and that's where we suddenly find ourselves with Rozier. Alex Caruso is a player on the move. He is zooming up the board, and it's almost like everybody finally bought in on all the stuff that we've been saying on the podcast, which is this guy's going to be good, and he doesn't need to touch the basketball. He started at 110.4. He's now getting his ADP is 102.3, which means that he's going earlier than that. Caruso's going in the late 90s. There's still a little bit of value there. I think I keep finding myself debating between Caruso and Herb Jones in the middle of the 9th round. In a lot of drafts, this actually keeps happening to me. And it's fine. I mean, they were quite close to one another last year. Herb Jones was 64. Caruso was 49 when all was said and done. I actually didn't realize he cracked the top 50. I think the board made some adjustment for guys that didn't qualify. They're very similar. Caruso was slightly more defensive stats. Herb Jones was better efficiency. Their threes, their boards, their assists are very close. Their scoring is very close. So if you need presumably the little bit of extra defensive stuff, you go Caruso. If you want the guy that can actually help you a little bit in percentages, you go Herb Jones. I like them both around 100. So I'm still good with Caruso there. I'm not like champing at the bit to get him, but I'm still good with it. So despite the move, I still think he's okay. Jakob Poeltl is the next big mover on the board, and I don't even remember where he's pre-ranked now, but it's a lot earlier than it used to be. It's 84 is the pre-rank, so let me hunt him down, you folks that are watching live. This is why I probably should have had a graphic ready on this one. Jakob Poeltl, pre-rank of 84, ADP jump for Jakob, 7.4 this week from 110 to 102.6. He's going way earlier than that. Poeltl's going, I would say more like early 90s from what I'm seeing. And that's fine. He was awesome at 110. So he's one of the instances of a guy that was an enormous value becoming a much smaller value. Still, I think a small value in the 90s on Poeltl. But not the no-brainer of the universe, which is what he was before. One of the biggest fallers on the board right now is Keyonte George. who, and this one you can blame on, the revamped board. His pre-rank fell from 95 to 124. I'll take a chance on him at 124 if he ends up falling that far. I wanted nothing to do with him at 95. His ADP has fallen from 98 to 111, meaning he's going in the 120s now. If there's no one else left, sure, 13th round, basically, if you get to that point. That's 12th round, I guess. Or is that 11th? That's still 11th round. I guess I don't really want him 11th round. 12th round, 13th round, 14th round. That's where you start to look at these point guards that do stuff. And Josh just talked to us about it on yesterday's show. 110 is still too early for me on Keyonte. But again, the movement suggests he's actually going more like 120. And that's not insane. But there's a bunch of guys I would still probably take ahead of him. Khris Middleton. He is one of the huge risers over the last 2 weeks. In fact, I think he's the biggest of anybody that's not a anomaly type. Moved up 6.6 last week, 10.4 this week. He's jumped from 131 to 114. So again, throw another 15 on that, basically. He's actually going very close to pick 100. I don't want him at 100. I'll take him at 115. I'll take him in the 10th round, basically. That's the end of the 9th. I get it. But no, that's the 10th round. Sorry. I'll take him in the 10th round. And then, there's the stash point. But I really, I detest taking guys coming into a year injured in the 10th round or sooner. But I don't think he's going to make it to the 11th round for you. So if you want Middleton and you want to take that shot, 10th round. Again, games cap. This is an easy one. Head-to-head, I think we're probably at some value still. But again, because that ADP movement suggests he's actually going more towards 100, I don't want it. I don't want that risk. It's too much. And I forgot to put him on the screen again, so whatever. Everybody can bite me. I'm not that good at doing this at the same time. You want to be a producer? How about that? I don't even remember what his frickin' pre-rank is. Sorry, I didn't get Khris Middleton on the board. He's somewhere around there. The hell are you, Khris Middleton? Now I'm weirded out. I can't find him. 83. 83 is the pre-rank, so I flexed the board too far. There you go. That's who we're talking about, was Middleton. Bad podcasting with Dan Bespris. That's what we're doing here now. 3 names left. Big movers this last week. Dereck Lively is your next one. He's up a whole bunch. And again, some of that is pre-rank movement. He went from 126 to 112, but that's actually not that colossal for this range. It's not small, but it's not by itself enough to make a player's ADP jump by 9. People just realized they wanted him more. He was going at 126 2 weeks ago. He's going at 116 now, meaning folks are actually starting to draft him more like 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, something like that. Or maybe I guess it's like 105 to 110 range. And for my money, I think I'd still rather just wait a tiny bit longer. I like Dereck Lively. I think he's going to have a good year, especially if you're punting free throws. He'll have a nice year. But you can still likely get Mitchell Robinson later. You can likely get Trayce Jackson-Davis later. You can likely get Daniel Gafford later. And I don't know that he beats those guys in overall rank by much, if at all. So I think we may have wiped out a little bit of the fun on Lively. And instead, you could focus on someone like a Mitchell Robinson who actually sort of quietly going the other way. His ADP has been slowly falling. Trayce Jackson-Davis's hasn't really moved much. Daniel Gafford's hasn't really moved that much. But the last 2 names on the list are also centers on the move. One of them is, this one pains me, and it's Big Al. I really thought we were going to be able to hold on to this value the whole draft season long because he's only going to be really good for the first half of the year. But people seem to be fine with that, despite the fact that he's old as dirt. So Big Al has seen his ADP jump by 11.6 slots in the last week, from 144.5 to 132.9 at the time of me recording his numbers. That means he's actually going more like another 10 slots sooner than that. So he's going around 120 now. And I love Al Horford. I don't like the idea of taking somebody who's a half season play in the 10th round. I still think I would do it because of how well-rounded he is. And it's really nice to get a guy that late that you can just plug in and does a little bit of everything, because those guys are pretty rare in this range. Usually that's like, if they're good at one thing, they're probably bad at three. And Horford is like pretty decent at a bunch of stuff. We are right on the cusp of wiping out his value. Right on the cusp. For Roto, I would go a lot higher on Al, because you bankroll whatever stats he gives you the first 3 months. Head-to-head, as soon as he's no longer useful, I mean, he's going to end up on waiver wires probably in January. Well. And the other big mover, Al Horford was one of the biggest. The second biggest in this range, Onyeka Okongwu, who has jumped 10.6 over the past week. Woo! That is a big one. Now, for him, you can blame a lot of it on pre-rank. His pre-rank jumped from 164, 164 to 110. Holy macaroni. That is a huge pre-rank jump. And I guess, part of the silliness was that he was at 164 to begin with, and never should have been that low. 110 is where, at least I personally thought he was probably going to be going anyway. But he's one of the biggest pre-rank moves. So not surprisingly, one of the biggest ADP moves. He's up 12.6 overall. You can assume that this flying leap forward is going to continue. I've been seeing Okongwu go more in the 115 range lately, and that's fine. But once again, we've wiped out a lot of the fun. He was, latest round flyer with mega upside guy, and now he's, crap, I got to take him in the 10th round as my last starter. And frankly, I would rather have someone like a Colin Sexton if they're still there. Probably won't be, but I'd rather have him. I'd rather have a Mike Conley if they're still there. These guys that are just a little bit more locked in. But Okongwu, of course, is I don't want to call it a mystery box, because we know a lot about him already, but there's a little bit of a mystery box element to what could be his fantasy line this year. Remember, he was number 108 last season with his block rate falling off a cliff, and Capela's still not out of the way. So the other side of this, the Okongwu thing, is we can be super disappointed that we lost 20 picks of value on him, or we can focus on the fact that he's still at 110, if that's where he's going, getting drafted near his floor. Because last year was kind of his floor. He's not going to get worse, I don't think. I'd be floored. 5% chance he gets worse. Probably a 30% chance he gets better, and a 60 some odd percent chance he stays exactly the same, which is fine. Even money is not a poor result at 110. That's still a guy you start all season long, and they're fine if unspectacular. But look, if the block rate inches back up, if his minutes inch up a little bit, if Capela, either they start him or Capela gets hurt or Capela gets moved, I mean, those are big leaper things. That's Okongwu top 50 if he's now playing full starters minutes. So there's a lot of reasons to still like him. Yes, it's frustrating. I get it. We're all in this together. We're all mad about this together, but he's still a value, even at that ridiculous spot. Quick recap on the players we listed on today's show. This one, we're going to take a deep breath and do Ace Ventura style. So hold on. Here we go. Kyrie Irving down, but not down quite far enough. James Harden up and not up quite far enough. LaMelo Ball up and maybe a little bit too far. Kawhi Leonard up a lot, and I screwed up going really fast, but he's now probably too dangerous for head-to-head, but definitely still cool for Roto. John Morant up 10. He's gone too far. Bane down 5.7. He's moved himself to even money. DeAndre Ayton up 6. He's now moved himself out of my head-to-head range, but still good for Roto. Tobias Harris up 5.8. I'm still drafting him in basically all formats. D'Lo down 5.6 over the last 2 weeks. I think he's now a value in all formats. Cam Thomas up 4.9. He is no longer a value to me. Jordan Poole down 7.4, has become a value in most situations. Clint Capela is up 7.8. I want nothing to do with that. Terry Rozier is down 5.6 and actually going even later. I actually kind of like him now. He's maybe moving on to my targets board. Alex Caruso up 8.1. He's still a small value now, not quite as large. Jakob Poeltl, same story. He's up 7.4, still a small value. Keyonte George down almost 10, 13 over the last 2 weeks. And frankly, that's not quite far enough. But if he really is going another 10 to 12 slots deeper than that, he's late round flyer territory now. Khris Middleton, way up the board and now a little bit too early for my taste. Dereck Lively, up a lot and a little too early for me as well. Onyeka Okongwu wiped out a lot of his value, but still some left. Al Horford also wiping out a lot of his value, but still, particularly in games cap, a little bit left. And I wanted to keep this show shorter, and I think we did. 35 minutes, that's not bad. Please, if you guys enjoyed this one, well, first of all, like it, because that'll be your way of saying, Dan, do this one again at the next ADP movement so we know where guys are going and we know who's moving into and out of value propositions. But please do subscribe. Subscription goes a long way. It kind of moves us up the board as well. And those ratings and reviews are also a big deal. At Dan Vespers is the Twitter handle. At Old Man Squad, if you want to follow the network. We have now, I think, 20-ish shows on the network. 2 or 3 more coming, likely before the start of the basketball season, with some really accomplished broadcasters, podcasters, and knowledgeable human beings. A lot of good reasons to follow us over at Old Man Squad. This is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan, back with you again tomorrow, and I don't even know what we're doing to start the day. It's a surprise. Enjoy the unknown. We'll see you then.